Sure, there's a teaching that I suppose, I don't know if it's just an old Jewish teaching or started with Jesus. It says, do unto others, you would have them do unto you. I thought about that and I realized if it was the highest truth, that's not the way it would be phrased. Because if you told that to criminally insane people, it wouldn't work out good. If you put a group of teenage boys and girls together and told the teenage boys that, it would turn into a big mess. So it's a partial truth. But if it comes from a master, it has to be a complete truth. So I think the original version in whatever language would have been, whatever you do to anyone, you do to yourself. Now you've got the truth, but that's a little hard for maybe, let's say, a person with lower consciousness. That's a little hard for them to comprehend. But I think today's consciousness is higher and it's time to understand that. So the way I would apply that, the practical application of that would be that whatever you say or do, you do to yourself only. It implies that there is a spectrum of consciousness that's subtle or deep within, you could say, that doesn't distinguish between me and someone else. So if I'm saying something mean to someone, then consciousness, there's a part of my consciousness that takes that as true about myself. So it would be that understanding alone would certainly be a good motive to cease any kind of gossip or maligning of another person. And I'm not saying I'm completely free of that. So there's another way to apply this, which is what we need to receive. If we can verbally give that to others, we'll start to feel a sense of receiving that. We'll start to feel a sense of satisfaction with that. Now, I'll give a couple examples. Let's say you don't like the way you look. And then you may think, well, I'll go do plastic surgery. But one of the great founders of plastic surgery discovered that even though he did plastic surgery on women and developed the art, he was one of the pioneers. He wrote a book, and I don't remember his name. He wrote a book about it, and he found that even though his surgery was remarkable and the women looked so much more beautiful in whatever feature they were working on, they would come back and say, I feel the same. It's the same. The surgery didn't work. But he could see a remarkable difference, but they couldn't see it because there was something deeper going on that they were not feeling good about themselves. So the way we would apply this teaching then would be the person who doesn't feel good about the way they look, if they develop the habit of saying to the people they encounter, wow, you look wonderful. Oh my gosh, you look great today. I'm so glad to see you. So the person's inner consciousness begins to hear that I look good. And sure enough, that feeling would develop of being at ease, feeling good about the way you look. So that would be a lot cheaper than plastic surgery. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have plastic surgery if you're driven to have it, fine, no problem. And here's another area where I think for me this teaching developed around was in some of my students and in myself actually, there was this kind of drive for approval, for recognition. And I could isolate that in myself and others as, well, we needed it as a child and it wasn't given. Our parents just didn't have the skill set to appreciate us and love us and make us the center of the universe in some way. Because when the spirit is coming into form, spirit really needs, and I think, to be received and welcome and deeply appreciated so they can fully enter their life. And so if we don't get that as a child, I certainly did, maybe still do unconsciously, and many people are seeking that approval still, even it's a 2-year-old, 3-year-old child that didn't get it then and is still kind of seeking it somehow. So in order to bring that into balance, if we were to give that kind of approval to other people over a period of time, we would begin to feel a certain satisfaction of that in our own psyche because of this original teaching that whatever you do to yourself only. Whatever you give to yourself only. So that's, and I think there's so many ways we could apply that wherever we feel a vacuity or a lack is one of the ways we can help to bring that into balance. It's a form of self-love, really, by treating that, by first of all, recognizing that part of ourselves. Because typically when a person sees or is told, oh, you're just seeking attention, the person who says, oh, you're just seeking attention is kind of maybe unconsciously or purposely imposing a layer of shame or guilt around it, which just drives it deeper and makes it more prone to come out and sabotage us in ways we really aren't happy with. So first of all, recognizing it, and then loving and appreciating that part of ourselves, to ourselves, by ourselves, but then also giving it to ourselves by speaking it to other people and creating that quality of acceptance and balance within the deeper consciousness. Because when it's sort of, let's say, adjusted or healed or completed or balanced deep in our own psyche, then I would think it would naturally show up on the surface in terms of our in and out, day in and out feelings and attitudes about ourselves that show up in our actions and speech.